I'm not going to put many slides up. There is a presentation that's available that will unpack some of the things that I'm saying, and it will be made available to you. But what I'm hoping to do is be a little bit informative and a little bit provocative to prepare the ground for questions later on. I work at 3 levels these days. I'm very often a carer for my grandchildren, thinking about what their future is going to be like, what their lives are like in the West Yorkshire village where I live. I work with local government improvement and development with the Healthy Communities team, and we're out and about a lot, doing things with local councils, working to support elected members, councils themselves and their partners to raise the game around health improvement and health inequalities. And it's been a privilege because I've been able to see practically on the ground an awful lot of things that have been very, very good. So we're beginning to get a sense of what does good look like for a local authority and its partners, and what does good look like for people in some of the communities. We've been working here in Cheshire East where we've had a peer challenge around the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment. Absolutely fascinating process, because hopefully, as you're challenged and learning by the way that we work, we're also bringing lessons back that we share across the whole of local government. And we're about to do that on a slightly grander scale, and I think later on Sue Turner may say a little bit, if there's a chance sort of over the break, about where that work on overview and scrutiny is taking us. But the third bit that I do is I walk around this thing which is called the Whitehall Village. And it does feel like a very strange kind of village. It felt particularly strange midweek on Wednesday because we were working with people from a range of public health organisations and representative organisations for GPs and local councillors. And we were exactly between Millbank Tower and local government house in Smith Square, which was where the young people were making their views known, sometimes quite appropriately, but sometimes quite violently and unacceptably. So we were, the background music to our discussion about what do we do for the white paper and the transition was angry young people on the streets telling people what they were thinking. It's just one of the curiosities of the world that these things happen sometimes like that. I want to talk just very, very briefly about the things that I've listed, but really what I want to do is set some challenges for elected members in particular, but for the whole of the council and local partnerships. We've been working in the local government group to try and think through what is this thing called sector-led improvement. Self-help horizontally across local government, rather than too much inspection from the top and too many different task forces landing, probably, Erica, in the same week in the same local authority. I know I had one week in my working life where I thought my job in life was to actually respond to all the people who had come to inspect me. And in that week, when I was a PCT chief exec, I didn't think I'd actually done anything really useful for the people who lived in my area. Now, the mood music is changing. So the local government groups supporting work around community-based budgeting, about productivity and efficiency, transformation, and new organisational forms that are beginning to emerge. And seeing a bit of this from this privileged position that I have, it's incredibly exciting. But the one thing that comes through from it is there is no model that will apply in every place. Each place has to do a bit of its own work. It may not be reinventing the wheel, but it certainly is customising the wheel and making it fit the local vehicles as well as possible. The Healthy Communities programme, which is inside local government improvement and development, is funded by the Department of Health, particularly to help councils build capacity and, if you like, think through things to get into the right position to make a difference. And it's a privilege to work on this, but most recently we've been working up work streams that are around what are these new health and wellbeing boards? What do we need to do to prepare people for that? And the associated question about the GP consortia and their links to local authorities and to councillors. When we went to the joint conference in Manchester, it was a conference of the Local Government Association, the Association of Directors of Children's Services, and the Association of Directors of Adult Services. Firstly, the mood music was very good. People were really upbeat and wanted to make things work. My reflection was it probably felt a bit like that in 1940, before the war had actually started and before there was very much blood to be seen. But people were up for tackling this enormous problem of the reduction in public expenditure and the recasting of the public services. And John Ransford announced that there was a good dialogue with GPs. It was coming to the point of a common statement or a concordat of some description, which will emerge fairly soon. But the GPs were not sort of isolated and away from the health inequalities agenda. They were seeing this as an important part of their core business. And I reflected that there are only 2 or 3 types of people who are persistent and stick in their neighbourhood or their local area. Some of the vicars and other people in faith communities do that. GPs do. GPs stay in one place for an extraordinary amount of time. And so do many elected members. Even with all of the vagaries of public opinion and the ballot box, elected members very often stay put for a long time, and they're the anchors. So in that recent discussion that we were having with the riot going on around us, the thing that came out was the elected members found they'd got an awful lot in common with the GPs. They'd got a lot of differences. They saw the world differently in many ways, but they had this sense of localism and responsibility for the people of their area. So we're doing work in the Health and Communities programme to try and help people prepare for this new world. There are cultural differences. And in a sense, before you can get some of the practical problems solved, you have to get into those cultural differences between the different professional groups, the different types of organisation. We know that many people in the public health service, with the best will in the world, don't understand much about how local government works, and they're in transition, and we need to help with that transition. We also know that many people in local government don't understand about the invisible parts of public health that aren't immediately obvious and upfront. The fiscal pressure is certainly driving, well, perhaps the biggest transformation of my working life, because it's about rebalancing, to an extent, state, business and civil society. And it's about asking this question, I think, about how do the wider determinants work, how do we help people to change their behaviours positively. And then this vexed question, which I think the councillor at the back, I think it was a councillor who asked this question earlier, which is where is the individual moral responsibility for how you live? I don't blame anybody for the fact that I'm a little bit overweight. That's my problem, my responsibility. But there are things in the structure of my working life that make it easier or harder for me to tackle that. And I've got a lot of control about my working life. Most people don't. So there's some really vexed questions about how do you attribute responsibility for the ills in life that you encounter, or your use of assets that you have personally or through your networks. And I hope we'll get into a bit of that discussion. I really want to get into a bit of discussion about how we value the public health workforce at a time when we may be kind of asking very hard questions about how does this movement of staff from one place to another actually happen.